All right, and welcome to another edition of I Love Black People. We welcome you to this journey where we're going to give you something really special today. I have a good friend, an old friend, who's going to give us some real understanding of what's going on in the tech space, the blockchain space. Somebody who's taught me so much in this space and has really been a real guide as it relates to Pan African technologists, global technologists, a thought leader. I think a man among men, just an outright genius. And without his support, the work I've done in the space would not have been possible, and definitely nowhere as successful. So I want to greet and welcome to today to our brother John Karanja, who's co-founder, CEO of Melanin Solar, as well as the founder and CEO of BitHub Africa.
Help protect us from racism and xenophobia by becoming an I Love Black People ambassador today. Join on iloveblackpeople.com. No matter where you are in the world, join us today and get access to the I Love Black People network. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.
Welcome, brother John Wainaina Karanja.
Asante sana, Sinclair. Thank you for the great introduction. It's a pleasure to be on your wonderful show. I've been listening to some episodes and seeing some of the great work you're doing, bringing Black people from around the world together to discuss pertinent issues around sort of empowerment, especially using technology. And of course, you yourself as an OG in the Bitcoin and blockchain space has been a great inspiration to myself.
All right, John. Well, thank you. And I appreciate your accolades, but you've been so helpful. Uh, I think just to kind of set the stage, uh, I'm in Zimbabwe today. You're in Kenya. Um, it's definitely good to be able to connect you and talk about what's going on the continent and the implications it has to the world. And I think the work that you're doing is clearly global. Even though you're based in Kenya, your work is all over the United States, all over the world. Tell us something about the things you're doing in this particular space we call blockchain and kind of give people a little introduction if you could.
All right, yeah. So my journey began, I think, in late 2013 when I first got introduced to Bitcoin by my co-founder Christian Kakoba, and at the time I was just sort of winding up a startup that we had started with Chris called CrowdPesa that was trying to deploy a mobile e-commerce platform, kind of like Amazon in Kenya. And one of the challenges we had was we didn't have a way to sort of collect payments from our consumers, mainly because the telecom that had the mobile money platform in place was not able to give us access to an API, because at the time they were sort of running the show from England. So we really didn't have access to a way for consumers to sort of utilize our platform. And as a result, that particular startup failed. And when Chris saw a conference in Nairobi called the Africoin conference, he asked me to come and see what these guys were talking about. They were talking about something called Bitcoin. So I think once we saw Bitcoin, we were like, yeah, this is really a very interesting technology, because first and foremost, it was open source. So it really allowed anyone to look into it and plug and play. So the rest, as you say, became history. I ended up going to the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam in 2014 to speak about sort of an African perspective of the technology. And that's where I met yourself, Sinclair, and Ala Kanani, if you recall. And that's where sort of my journey began in the space in terms of learning about the technology and building community in Africa and beyond. Initially with BitHub Africa, but later on with the Black Blockchain Summit, which we host in Washington D.C. For the
Thank
past 3
you,
years.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for co-hosting.
For sure, yeah. So, so for us, the technology has been really an eye opener in terms of how money works. And I'm not an economist. I'm a IT and sociologist by training. So to learn about money by going to the school of Bitcoin was really something that opened my eyes and opened the eyes of many people today. And the results are there for everyone to see. In that it's now becoming a global digital asset, and I believe it will become a global digital currency as well. So, I mean, that's how sort of my journey began in the space and where I see things going.
When you start, I think you've seen so many of the different changes and the growth of the space. What would you say now that you're dealing with and creating a connection to blockchain and renewable energy? I think you've always been ahead of the curve. I think, in literally, as much as people focus on Silicon Valley, you being in Kenya and Nairobi, I think what you've done, if it was in the same arena, you would probably easily be one of the top 10 technologists people would talk about. But again, when you're away from the spotlight doing this incredible work, I think sometimes we don't get to hear some of the genius of the work you've done. Can you talk some more about how you're connecting this technology we call blockchain to renewable energy, which are real solutions and real use cases?
Yeah, that's really a great and pertinent question. I think you hear a lot about these days how the Bitcoin mining, for example, is using an inordinate amount of energy in terms of the amount of electricity being used to secure the Bitcoin network. Well, Bitcoin, among other things, is an innovation in terms of driving the adoption of renewable energy. So if you look at what has happened the past 12 years or so, is you've seen a lot of incapacitated energy resource, be they hydroelectric dams in China, geothermal energy resources in Iceland, being utilized to mine Bitcoin. And in this way, these very expensive energy resources have been subsidized and have been able to come mainstream and been used for other purposes other than mining Bitcoin. So Bitcoin in itself is innovation in terms of energy adoption. And how my company, Melanin Solar, connects this to the sort of African scenario is that we know that one of the huge challenges we have in Africa is access to energy. And actually, this sort of concept was something that I saw in Zimbabwe when I joined your team, Bitmari at the time, in terms of looking at what women were doing with your remittance platform, and we found that they were funding solar water pumps, and people like this on the ground, farmers, be they farmers or be they just normal households, one of the huge challenges they have is lack of access to reliable energy. And At the same time, we have a $2 trillion dollar opportunity in Africa that has not been developed or that has not been sort of seen large capital investment come in. So we believe, other than sort of the financial applications that we're beginning to see being built on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, that energy is the next frontier market in terms of allowing people to have access to energy. And the way we're sort of going about it is we're creating a distributed energy crowd grid systems. We just came back from deploying our first system in Kajiado, Kenya, amongst the Maasai community. And the idea is for them to be able to share the cost of deploying these expensive solar systems and then using proof of work mechanism to generate tokens that store some of those energy as a form of sort of token that they can exchange later on, creating what we call economies of scale, whereby for the first time, Africans can trade the abundant energy they have access to using this digital technology. So we think energy is the next huge frontier, besides finance, in terms of what cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology like Bitcoin can do.
And in your use case, where you're working on and having a token to help with allowing us to exchange value with energy, what are some things that people could do to be supportive? I know this is not financial, this is not fundraising, bringing these opportunities to our people about what work is being done. There's always a lot of scams. There's folks who are doing it in a way that they're not fronts for Europeans or Asians, but literally dedicated to our people and have figured out a way to use their talents to help us. How do we get more of our community involved in supporting projects like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for sort of these technologies to work and to reach the people who are the intended beneficiaries, is you have to build community. Community is key, and that's one of our key focuses for the past sort of 7 years that we've been around as Speed Up Africa, is building an organic community from the ground up that we educate on the fundamental principles or the first principles of these technologies, or the first principles of even money to begin with, and money as a form of expression of value. So we know traditionally, if you look at, for example, the Maasai community, who I spent a week with, is they've developed over hundreds, if not thousands of years, culture that allows them to sort of understand each other's value and each other's unique place in the society, and how young people and can work together with old people, or women can work with men to create value that is sustainable beyond sort of the commercial sort of things that we see, for example, with trading, or in the case of cryptocurrencies, speculation. So we're building what we call a ground up organic ecosystem, where whatever token, be it Bitcoin or be it the Wife token, or with Sister Tavonia, the Guap token, just is a tool to scale up the expression of value within that community. And I believe the cryptocurrencies that will succeed, or that get widely adopted, are the ones that represent value that is important to the communities that are using and benefiting from those tokens. So one of the challenges we had was the get rich quick schemes, which were quite pervasive and were quite enticing, that came early on, and we've seen sort of the fallout that came from that, and the way we were able to re-educate ourselves on the meaning of value, and now being able to sort of tap into our own African cultures to sort of begin to look at real use cases, such as energy and so on. So the end result is, if you look at what's happening in Nigeria, is you're beginning to see the organic use of Bitcoin, for example, as a standard in terms of a trade, whether it's remittances, whether it's people saving or hedging against their local currencies to protect themselves, given that we're in a pandemic. So it's this sort of situation where there are huge difficulties like pandemics that really bring out the real use cases and the real players who have hitherto not been able to surface because of all the noise that has been there for the past decade in the cryptocurrency space.
I think you made a good point, even with the fact of the energy model. And like you said, that people have talked about how, in order to secure the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, how much energy is used. And at first, I always was dismissive. And I think your solution actually speaks directly to it. But I would always tell people, well, to make paper money, fiat, to make coinage, and mint those, it takes so many resources. Like literally, what it takes to create encrypted data would never be the same cost as to make coins. So I was telling somebody, I said, look, it's almost like somebody telling me the internet takes a lot of energy. So we need to use postal mail that we send. I mean, it's paper, you got to cut down trees. Like, you can't even compare cutting down trees to the internet. Like, it doesn't make sense. But I think instead of being dismissive, to actually listen to what people are saying and come up and show how amazing this technology, when you have innovators like yourself, can directly address the issue of these technologies, and how not only is this a better alternative to paper money and to credit cards being made with these strips on them and chips on them. Like, this is literally a better way to build a world in the future with a small carbon footprint, to literally do this in a way where our people can actually take the value that's being generated from their creation of renewable energy and be able to transfer it and transact. It's super brilliant and so scalable because you're not using paper money or plastic cards. Um, what do you see, and what are your, I guess, your roadmap, or where are you guys going with your project? Uh, again, you hear so many projects that are more speculative and more on the hype, but projects like that are like yours that really will solve problems. We all need to be able to keep up with you. So where are you taking this, brother Karanja? Where are you taking this, black man?
All right, yeah. So the journey is slow but sure. So I think where we're at basically is we're at the point where we are just about to showcase what we've been able to do in terms of leveraging the Lightning Network on the Bitcoin protocol, as well as what we call a Bitcoin auxiliary chain, or it's similar to a sidechain called the Wire protocol. And the most important thing for us to do is to begin in training engineers around Africa in particular, because this is where the benefits will be highest going forward, to begin to utilize these technologies and to begin to adopt them. And in our case, we made these technologies CPU friendly, which means they're able to work much more easily with smaller computers and mobile phones, which are widely available on the continent. So far, our network has been sort of mined across, I would say, 15 countries or so around the world. And for the first time, we've had African countries as major contributors in terms of any global protocol that you see out there. So for us, it's really just about education, increasing adoption of the technology at the engineering level, and then fine-tuning the user experience with our people in Kajiado, our Maasai people in Kajiado, and just continuing to improve the system. So we are a startup. So as all startups go, they do need funding. So I think once we have our prototype out there, we'll also be sort of looking for funding to fund the startup as well.
Look, I've been hearing that, 'cause I think we're gearing up with iloveblackpeople.com, looking at gearing up for another round of funding. with so many people being or saying that they're interested in addressing the issues of racial disparity and making sure that Black innovators get their just due and support, because we do outperform. Like what it takes for you to do what you do and somebody in San Francisco is not the same, yet you're able to do in spite of so many things with less resources, with a lower burn rate. I really think, with some of these funds with Black LPs that are literally making sure that there's capital available. This, I think it's better to pull the trigger sooner than later while this window of opportunity is there. But how have you seen this climate overall in technology and capital? Because it's always seems like even when I see projects in Africa, the projects getting funded have at least one Asian or European co-founder and maybe one Black guy, but never
Yeah.
looking at it from a perspective that indigenous African people with amazing solutions to real problems, getting an opportunity to be funded and look and funded and fail. Like I think it's clear that when you look in the venture space, they'll place a bet on 10 projects and 9 of them fail. And if one makes it, they're still successful. I'm like, why can't we be a part of the 9? Like, look, I want to be the one that makes it, but we don't even get to be one of the 10 that don't make it, because they'll come up with all kind of reasons why we ain't ready. Well, hell, you had 9 that wasn't ready, and you still betting on them. Like, come on. As Black founders, and you particularly as an indigenous, amazing, dynamic African founder, what do you see in the space as capital?
Yeah, I've been a techpreneur for I think 10 years plus, and one thing that African and Black entrepreneurs or techpreneurs in general get is a lot of mentorship. So people keep wanting to give us mentorship, but they never want to cut a check. So the good news is that's changing because we're beginning to see hyper profitable and hyper growth Black or African startups coming out of Africa. So if you're going to be looking at things from a purely investment point of view and a profitability point of view, you're gonna want to look at an African entrepreneur because he's gonna be more hardened, more experienced, and having survived the challenges that you talked about, and we've seen a lot of great startups coming out of Nigeria from the crypto space, and I'm very positive about the future because Africa is a home of innovation. If it works in Africa, it's gonna work everywhere else in the world. Just because we are sort of in the toughest environments, and whatever we are making is sort of resilient because it has been built from the ground up. So I'm actually quite optimistic about the future, but we need to remain vigilant, advocating for ourselves, and getting our fair share from the global market, so to speak.
I mean, are there any other folks that you think that just don't get their due and should be acknowledged?
Yeah, for sure. There are quite a number. I think the first person that comes to mind is Sister Deidre McIntyre. She runs a group called Black People and Cryptocurrency, and she's really been an enabler in the space. And she's really been sort of addressing some of these issues that we've discussed today in terms of opening up opportunities for not just Black entrepreneurs in America, but Black entrepreneurs around the world. We have many startups in Africa that are looking to sort of disrupt a lot of legacy systems in the fintech space. There are quite a number in Nigeria that just got sort of regulation standard against them, and they were already showing hyper growth, as I said before. So there is still, I would say, the regulatory challenge that we face on the continent, in that our regulators haven't really taken to heart sort of competitive advantage that we have being a young continent in terms of access to this digital economy or digital opportunities. So there are many startups, more than I can count, that are sort of struggling and are facing a lot of challenges. I think I could name a few, like Pesabase in Kenya. We have Bundle Finance in Nigeria. We have Sister Lakanani with Plus in Botswana. So there are quite a number, and I think we really need to shout on the rooftops about opening up opportunities for African entrepreneurs as well.
If you could show us a Swahili prayer, bro, just something short, but I know it's going to be powerful if it's coming from you.
All right. I really appreciate all of that, Sinclair. I think I could just say the same thing about you in terms of what you've done for the community, especially coming down all the way to Africa from America, and having the foresight to bridge the blockchain, the Pan-African or the Black blockchain world together. So asante sana, Sinclair. So we'll just do a short prayer, and this is the Lord's Prayer in Swahili, and here I go. Baba yetu uliye mbinguni, jina lako litukuzwe, ufalme wako ufike, utakalo lifanyike duniani kama mbinguni. Utupe leo mkate wetu wa kila siku, utusamehe makosa yetu kama nasi tunavyowasamehe waliotukosea, usitutie katika kishawishi, lakini utuopoe maovuni. Amina.
Help protect us from racism and xenophobia by becoming an I Love Black People ambassador today. Join on iloveblackpeople.com. No matter where you are in the world, join us today and get access to the I Love Black People network. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.
With that being said, I am because we are, and again, thank you, amazing, dynamic, wonderful brother, John Wainaina Karanja. Thank you.